Well, that was interesting, wasn't it? Let's ignore weird noises. Okay, let's focus. You'll be glad to know that we're coming to this is the last major section in 2 Timothy, which deals with the false teachers. It's a bit grim, keep talking about false teachers all the time, isn't it? It's quite hard work sometimes, but I'm sure we've all had enough of them by now. And Paul had enough of the false teachers as well. He doesn't want Timothy to get caught up in their web. And so to hammer home what he's already said, Paul repeats the warning of previous chapters and says halfway at the end of verse 5, avoid such people. And Paul doesn't want Timothy just to gloss over this and miss this. Notice the words he starts in verse 1, but understand this. So in other words, take note of this. Don't miss this. Don't be surprised. Be warned. What you're going through, the hardship, this opposition, it's not abnormal. There will be conflict. There will be people with silly ideas that come into the church as you try to contend for the truth. So take note of this. Be warned. This is going to happen. Don't think, Timothy, that you can hunker down until it all passes and then everything will be lovely and easy. Verse 1, that in the last days there will come times of difficulty. There will come times of difficulty. He mentions the last days. So what are those last days? Are they talking about the final days or what's it talking about? Well, according to Acts 2, which we read, and Hebrews chapter 1, verses 1 and 2, we are in the last days. The last days arrived when the Messiah arrived. And if Timothy had lived in the last days, then how much more so us? And in mentioning the last days, Paul sets this fight for the truth in the context between Jesus' first coming and his second coming. And that orientates us in history, doesn't it? It helps us appreciate where we fit into the story and how this all comes together. Jesus will return. The gospel will be shown to be true, and your faith will be vindicated. But we haven't got to that day. That's the day of the Lord, the final day. There is a final day coming, but we're not in that day. We are in the last days leading up to that day. So in these last days, what can we expect? Paul says there will be times or seasons that can be translated as seasons of difficulty. The idea is it's not that the church faces one long season of difficulty. It will change. It will get easier. It will get harder. And we see that throughout the world. For a time, one area faces great persecution. And then perhaps in the next century, it gets easier. And that persecution, it changes depending on where you are and what time you live in. Somewhere it will flourish, somewhere it will suffer. But understand this, Paul's saying, the church will go through some terrible times, some terrible seasons. But when we are going through these terrible seasons, it might seem like that's it, because we've lived through it for 50 years or 100 years, but actually it's just a season. That's not how it's going to be forever. That gives us hope. This isn't because the gospel is failing. It's just a season. It's helpful for us, isn't it? When we look around and we go, well, what's God doing? Why isn't he doing this? We live in seasons. So we've been warned that there will be seasons of difficulty. So I hope you sort of just see how you fit into history. Because we can get so bogged down with our daily life that we miss it, don't we? You get up, you get the kids ready for school, you go to work or whatever, you do your bit, you get home, you cook, you eat, you wash up, you sleep, and you repeat. Or maybe that's not your life. Maybe you get up, you get yourself breakfast, you don't do much all day, you get bored, and then you go to bed, and that's it. Whatever it is your day, you go through it, and that's what we do, and that takes up our thinking, doesn't it? We forget we are part of something bigger, greater. We are God's people. We are part of the church, and there is a plan. This isn't just how it's going to go on forever and ever and ever. We live in the last days, and Jesus is coming back. Amen. Shouldn't that frame the way that we live? with that knowledge that Jesus is coming back. We're not aimlessly drifting through history. We're heading towards Jesus' return. And that's helpful to remember because times are going to get tough. If they're not tough now, they will get tough later. Verses 12 and 13, we didn't read them. We'll look at them next week. But indeed, all who desire to live a godly life in Christ Jesus will be persecuted, while evil people and imposters will go from bad to worse, deceiving and being deceived. So there will be great times of difficulty for the church. And these seasons, they might get harder and more intense as history reaches those last of the last days. But we can take heart because despite the opposition, the next stage of the plan, the big next stage is Jesus is going to return. The days are counting down. But what brings about these terrible times? The answer comes in verse 2. For people. For people. What's wrong with the world? People. I am. You are. We are what is wrong with the world. I'm sure your job would be much easier if it didn't have to deal with people. They just cause we cause so many problems, don't we? It's like, a church would be wonderful, except for the people. Except we bring trouble into wherever there is people, there's problems. It's just what we do. The people Paul describes are those who have big issues in their life. They cause problems. We're going to look at that in our first point. Misdirected love. Misdirected love. It's common to hear the idea, the notion that we should love ourselves. You just got to love yourself a bit more. Put yourself first. But of course, what happens when you put about 8 billion people together on a world whose top priority is to love themselves? You have problems. The Bible doesn't tell us to love ourselves. It assumes we already do that anyway. That's our default position. I know some people need help with self-esteem and those things, but for the majority of the people, the problem is, well, not the problem, but the fact is we do love ourselves. We don't need to be told to do that. We just do that. The Bible calls us, actually not, if you just love yourself a bit more, all the problems will be sorted. It redirects us and says, no, what you need to do, love someone far greater than ourselves. We are to love God. Love God. And when our love for God is right, then everything else, including our love for self and our love for other people, then that will be corrected too. Love that treasures self over God always leads to problems. And we see this from the ugly list that Paul gives us here. Now, if you've had a child at any point, or if you ask a parent who's just had a new child or something, you could say, what would you like Junior to grow up to be like? What would you want their character to be like? No one's going to say, well, I hope she grows up to be proud and arrogant. No one's going to want that for their child, are they? It's just a horrible thing. No one wants them to be proud or arrogant. Or, I want my son to be ungrateful and brutal. Yes, that's what I want for my son. I think pretty much everyone agrees that this list of vices is completely undesirable. We're not going to go through them all in detail because that would just take forever. But we're just going to whiz through some of them just to get the impression of them. But the first and the second to last, they really do encapsulate the problem here. So in verse 2, the first one, people will be lovers of self. That introduces the problem. People will be lovers of self. And then if you drop all the way down to verse 4, you see lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God. So you've got that contrast, lovers of self, and then they're lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God. And that's what's gone wrong. Their focus, their love is inward. It's to self rather than outward towards God. And I don't know if you noticed as we were reading through this list, it's almost like the polar opposite of the fruit of the Spirit. Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Those are the traits that the Spirit is at work in us to produce. Those are the things that we should see growing in the person who's set their love on the Lord. But for those taken up with ourselves, all these other things tend to follow. So we'll have money. Why? Because we want to treat ourselves, because we are the most important thing in our lives. We want to buy the things that we deserve. We'll be proud and boastful because we'll have an exaggerated sense of self-importance. It's all about me. So of course I'm going to talk about me all the time. We'll want people to know just how great we are. So in every conversation, we're going to swing it around to me, and because we're obsessed by ourselves. This person that Paul's talking about, they assume that they are in the right. Of course I'm in the right because, it's me. And I think I know better than everyone else. So there's going to be arrogance there, assuming that we are better and we know better than everyone else. And when we put ourselves onto that pedestal, if anyone should dare to question us or correct us or instruct us, we'll blaspheme them. So we'll slander them. We'll distort what they've said and paint them in a bad light to bring them down and elevate ourselves, because we don't like anyone, putting us in our place, because our place is at the top, isn't it? And then he mentions being disobedient to parents. And a lot of these things actually they sort of seem to center around the family, the first ones anyway. Why does he mention being rebellious against parents? Because actually that reveals we have a rebellious spirit in us. If we are a rebel at home, that is often symptomatic of a bad attitude towards God. Because that's what it is. That's what it shows. You rebel against authority, and the ultimate authority is God. So that often comes out in the home by being rebellious against parents. Why do we rebel against authority? Because I want to do what I want to do, and I don't want anyone to tell me, anything else. I'm in charge. I want to be in charge. And then again, something that we can see in the home, but in other places, Paul mentions ungratefulness. And that's a horrible thing, isn't it? If you've got a spoiled child or an ungrateful child, you give them something and they're just ungrateful. That's horrible. That's extremely prevalent in our culture, isn't it? We call it entitlement. People living as if the world owes them something. They don't want to do much, but they expect a lot. And then he talks about being heartless, so lacking those normal human emotions, being unsympathetic and unwilling to sympathize with people. And then we get to this idea of being unappeasable. And we see all of these things in our culture. I hope you're it's just so relevant, isn't it? Unappeasable, that's being unreasonable, not willing to negotiate. It's what I say or nothing. It's my way or just, I'm not interested in you. We're going to do things my way because that's it. I'm not going to budge. We see this in the world, don't we? We see it. It's like, it's my way or nothing. Oh, but we see it in families as well. Sometimes it's like one partner will say, well, we're going to do things my way, and if you don't like it, well, you suffer the consequences. Selfishness. And so there's this unreasonable spirit there. But it's amazing, isn't it? If you want to see these traits that Paul is talking about, you just have to look in social media, don't you? Look at a slightly controversial post that someone's made and just go down. It's horrible, but look down some of the comments and the way people speak to each other. They're not interested in understanding or being kind or help. It's just like, bang, 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 I'm going to shoot you down. And if you don't agree with me, I'm going to call your names and maybe even cancel you, block you. This is our culture. It's amazing, isn't it? And it's interesting. He talks about being brutal. And I don't know if you've seen the sort of video or something of people being involved in road rage. It's shocking sometimes. It's horrific how something quite small can erupt into this brutal outbreak of violence. It's scary sometimes to see how true these words are on our streets. A complete loss of control, all out of proportion to what happened. Here's another interesting one, verse 3, not loving good. And isn't that our culture? Not loving good. We don't want to be told what is good. We want to define that ourselves. And if people disagree with us, we can call them bigots. Why? Because halfway through verse 4, we are lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God. We assume if it feels good, then it must be good. And in our pursuit of pleasure, everything else needs to bow before that, because we are in the place of God. We are in the place. We are loving ourselves above God. Paul's got our society down to a T, hasn't it? It's like he's been sitting in McDonald's up the road there with a coffee and just watching life happen around him. And it's just, yeah. It's like he's just commentating on our society. It's all about me, my happiness, my fulfillment, my pleasure, me, and don't you get in my way. But this may be an accurate diagnosis of what happens in our world around us when our love is focused on me rather than on God. But Paul's actual point here isn't really so much to comment on the world out there. It is a comment on the world in general. But his point is that there are people who claim to be believers but who are acting just like the world. So he's painted this picture. These are what these people are like. And there's people, some of whom, they're like this in the church. So verse 6, for among them are those who, and then so on. So there's people who look like they should be believers or claim to be believers, but actually you can see in their lives they're just like everyone else. They are insidious pretenders. Look at verse 13 again. While evil people and imposters will go from bad to worse, deceiving and being deceived. Imposters, they are of the world, but they are pretending to be something else. And that's Paul's main focus here. Verse 5, having the appearance of godliness, they look really good, but denying its power. So these false teachers, they are in the church. They look good. They go through the outward displays of religion, and they may well appear respectable, even quite knowledgeable at some times, but they don't really love God. They love themselves, their position, their power, their influence, what they are getting from whatever it is they're doing. They don't really love God. They love themselves. And now, to be honest, I don't know about you, but as I look through this list, it's a bit worrying, isn't it? Because I think I do some of these things. I don't know about you. I'm pretty sure if we're honest with ourselves, to some degree, there's some of these things that I find in myself. It's a bit worrying, isn't it? But there is a difference, because hopefully we recognize our sin. We recognize and we are praying, Lord, change me where I am wrong. And we are, if we belong to the Lord, we are being changed. Slowly maybe. But you are not what you once were. And actually the Lord is at work in you. Maybe it's just baby steps. But he is changing you, isn't he? And you do love him. And I know not as much as you want to. You say, oh, Lord, I'd love to love you more. I don't know why I don't love you more. But there's that desire in you. There is that genuine desire. I want to love the Lord. This is what a Christian does. I want to know him. I do want to seek him. I want these things. And we're not comfortable with the sin in our lives. And so we seek forgiveness. And the Spirit's power is working in us to help us put these things to death. And that is the difference you see. These people that Paul is talking about, they're not bothered to seek the Lord. They don't really want to love the Lord. They don't want to be genuine. They're just doing what they need to do to get to where they want to be. And this is what it means in verse 5, to have the appearance of godliness but denying its power. The power Paul is speaking about isn't like some Harry Potter one-zapping power to do miracles, like, and impress people with great vast shows of miraculous power and those sorts of things. That's not the power he's talking about. It's the power of the gospel to change lives. It's to be transformed by the renewing of our minds as we submit ourselves to him. It's instead of rejecting his truth, we submit ourselves to his truth. Allowing God's truth to break us, to remake us as the Spirit goes to work in us to make us more like Jesus. This is the power of the gospel. Making us more like Jesus. These people, they give the appearance that that's happening. They pretend that this is happening, but really it's a show, and their main concern is not loving God, but loving themselves above all else. So I wonder what your main concern is in life. You see, our first reaction is possibly to apply this to others and start to, I wonder if is he talking about them? And we start to apply it to everyone else, don't we? But actually, maybe we should just think about ourselves a little bit. How much of the world's attitude is in me? Are we lovers of self? Or are we lovers of God? Are we being transformed by the power of God? If not, man, this should make us run to the Lord, shouldn't it? Or are we just pretending? Because it suits us at the moment. Well, Paul tells Timothy clearly to avoid this kind of person. And that confirms the fact that this isn't just concerning the last of the last days, just before Jesus is about to return, because Timothy had to do something. These people were there at that time, and he is to avoid them. Who is he to avoid? Is it the world out there that is to avoid? Well, no, because they need saving. In the next chapter, Timothy is told to do the work of an evangelist. How can he do that if he's not to be with these people? They need the power of the gospel in their lives. No, actually, the people he's to avoid is those who go in the name of truth, but in reality, they oppose the truth. I don't think this means don't talk to them, blank them, just ignore them. After all, in chapter 2, 25, he's to correct his opponents with gentleness. But I think here, rather, it's not to be associated with them. To not have them as your allies. Don't recognize them as part of the church. Don't send them out in the church's name, in Christ's name. Don't give your seal of approval to them. So avoid them. They're not part of you. You don't want these people representing the church or the gospel. So he can correct them, but not work with them, because they don't love God. And just like the world, actually they are rejecting God's truth. And so as far as the faith is concerned, they are worthless. They're valueless. They have no purpose. They can't play a part in it. They don't know the truth. They don't love God. So they can't be a part of it. Now, we're not expecting perfection in others, I hope, just as we don't expect perfection in us. So we don't look at someone and they're struggling with sin and go, I'm not talking to you. That's not the way, is it? But we are right to be cautious about those who say one thing, but whose lives and actions and attitudes clearly say another. So it's not if someone struggles with sin, we don't talk to them. Rather, if there is this pattern of hypocrisy, then we need to be cautious. So these people, they had misdirected their love. Their love is on themselves and on pleasure rather than on God. And when our love is on God, actually, those wrong loves, those wrong attitudes to ourselves and to others, actually, they get corrected. So if our love is in the right place on God, then our love towards others and ourselves, that gets corrected. When it's in the wrong place, when it's on self, then we will love ourselves in a bad way and love others in a bad way, or not love others at all. And these self-lovers, they haven't just gone astray themselves, but they are teaching others to go astray too. We're going to look at that in our last, and you'll be pleased to know, briefer point, misdirecting people. Misdirecting people. So we've looked at what kind of people they were behind that mask that they're wearing. They are worldly imposters who don't really love God. Now Paul shines the light on the work, the sort of things that they're doing, the dubious activities. You've probably all seen those wildlife documentaries with David Attenborough's dulcet tones narrating the scene. I quite enjoy a good documentary, and you've probably seen those ones that involve a hunt. They're the exciting ones, aren't they? And the lions are there, and they're sort of in the grass, and they're choosing their victim, and you watch as the predator stalks and chooses, and they're looking for the slowest, the smallest, the most isolated, the vulnerable ones, so that they can pick that one off and eat them. And when they've selected their target, they strike, and they get them sometimes. And that's what the false teachers were doing. They hunt. And they're not like running after them like this great big show. They creep. They worm their way into the houses, to the households. Probably with flattery and charm and a veneer of respectability. And they have a particular prey in mind. Weak women. Just to be clear, Paul isn't saying that all women are weak, all gullible. He's saying this is who these teachers go for, weak women. This is their prey. They're looking, right, are you a weak one? Can I get you? I think I might be able to. They are looking out for the vulnerable, for the weak, for those who they can gain control over. So this isn't a comment on all women. This is just who their prey is. They're looking for the weak ones, for the weak women. There's probably some very wise women they would stay well clear of. But why women in particular? Well, by the nature of the society, the teachers would have all been male. And from what Paul says about these women, they are the kind of women who are led astray by various passions. So perhaps there is a sensual dimension to this. So it would make sense for the men to go in, to try and exert their control over these women, using their masculinity perhaps as a way to gain control. Were they waiting for the men to leave for work and then knocking on the door? Perhaps. Some sort of some cults and groups do that, don't they? They sort of come knocking on the door when you least expect it, and they find someone they think they can get, they keep coming, don't they? Or perhaps they were more probably targeting wealthy widows whom they could woo with their smooth talk and impress with their nuggets of novel teaching. Or perhaps they particularly targeted women who were open to suggestion. Paul speaks about burdened with sins. So perhaps these were people who could be sort of influenced in this unhelpful way. But whatever it is, they're selecting their targets and perhaps looking for some way to relieve their guilt. So it's okay. You can just live how you want. It doesn't really matter. Telling them these untruths. You don't need to repent. Just let your guilt go away. Love yourself. Be who you want to be. And it's likely that these women would be willing to pay for their private instructor. But this private tuition, this bogus tuition, it did no good. These babblers were spewing forth their gangrenous words, denying the resurrection, full of unhelpful speculations and half-truths. It could never bring these women to the truth. It could never save them. And that's because they weren't preaching the gospel. They weren't teaching the gospel. There's no saving power there. And that's what happens when we redefine or deny the true gospel. We pull the plug on the power. Because it's not philosophy, it's not science, it's not our own clever ideas that save people, it's the gospel. It's the gospel that is the power of God for salvation to everyone who believes. It's personal faith in Jesus on what he's done on the cross that saves. It's not inventing our own truth. It's not just coming up with whatever makes ourselves feel good. It is, this is the truth. I'm going to put my faith, my trust in that. Building our lives on God's truth. But these false teachers, they're not sharing God's truth. They oppose the truth, and that still happens today. I saw a tweet by well-known Christian leader Steve Chalk. He tweeted back in March 2022. Let me read it for you. This is what he says. The way I see it, the opposition of some in the church to same-sex marriage is depressing, and even more than that, cruel and abusive. However, he says, the gentle tide of LGBT inclusion is coming in. Indeed, it is unstoppable, and that stubborn sandcastle of resistance is crumbling fast. You see, right there, a supposed Christian leader is opposed to the clear truth of God and is teaching others to follow too. Paul compares the false teachers of Timothy's day to Jannes and Jambres. I don't know how to say those names. They're weird names, aren't they? But they were the names that Jewish tradition had given to the two chief magicians in Pharaoh's court when Moses went to ask for God's people to be released. You probably remember the story. Moses was doing some amazing things with the staff and stuff was happening. And then the magicians copied it. And this is what Satan does. He copies. He offers counterfeit promises, often mixing just a little bit of the truth so that it sounds plausible. But those men, and with their tricks and their satanic magic, they looked impressive. And maybe Moses was thinking, hang on, this isn't how it was meant to go. You know, I've got the power of God, so how are they copying what I'm doing? But they couldn't keep up. They were shown to be limited. And so here, the false teachers who oppose the truth, they might look successful, they might look powerful and influential, they might deceive many, but it is only for a season. Sooner or later, just as with those magicians in the Old Testament, sooner or later, their folly will be plain to all. Their power, their influence, it will run out. The wisdom of the world, when it opposes God, always ends up creating problems and being shown to be false. But the truth of God will always prevail. And that's what Timothy and we are to remain faithful to. So we are to stand on God's truth. We are not to be associated with imposters who clearly reject God and are opposed to the truth. And we certainly don't want to be those who give off the appearance of loving God when really in our heart we don't love him. Surely we want to be those who genuinely love and treasure the Lord, don't we? So take note, North Bradley Baptist Church. In the last days, there will be seasons of difficulty and opposition. There will. It's going to come. There will be those who infiltrate the church with less than sincere motives. But as for us, let's make sure that we love the Lord. Let's make sure that we stay true to his word. And then our love for others and for ourselves, that will be good and not bad.